Hey Reddit, it's Gus again. For those unfamiliar with me, I made several posts detailing me and my friend Drake's fucked up experience participating in what was supposed to be a scavenger hunt in an abandoned hospital. The long and short of that ordeal was that we saved up and moved out of our apartment. We thought our current one would be better since it had 2 bedrooms and 2 baths. Little did we know it would prove to be much worse. Listing all of our complaints about this place would bog this post down. Just know the most significant ones have to do with broken AC, broken heater, the fridge dying, roaches like you wouldn't believe, bursting pipes, and, not to mention, upstairs neighbors. Personally, I think having kids should preclude someone from living on an upper floor. It also doesn't help that the walls are thinner than paper. The things I've heard our middle-aged neighbors do on the other side of my bedroom wall will haunt me almost as much as what Erickson put us through. Speaking of whom, I wonder whatever happened to him. Oh well, the less said about that nutfuck, the better. Anyway, I hate this double standard of management, always expecting rent on time, yet we have to complain about 50 times before they finally send someone out. Even then, they always cut corners in the worst way possible. If I had to describe the repairs they've made in a phrase, it would be Band-Aids on bullet wounds. This latest pain in the ass was hands down the worst of all. It all began last weekend. Our first 2 days in 2 months turned into some steaming horse shit. Me and Drake were driving home on Friday night. While we have separate vehicles, carpooling saves money since our shifts are roughly the same length. In this case, we were in Drake's truck. So what are you planning on doing when we get home? Sleeping. Besides that, I don't know, maybe a movie? Hey, did they ever fix the fridge? I'm not sure. I'd have to check my messages and my phone's charging. Anyway, I'm starving. Why don't we grab a bite? Glancing out the window showed that every restaurant and grocery store was closed. Where? Drake asked. Gas station food it is, I guess. We bought some tajitos and Coke, then headed to our apartment. Drake swiped his gate key several times, and it remained closed. Gus, it's broken again. I got it, hang on. Rummaging through the glove department, I pulled out a screwdriver. Fidgeting with the scanner caused it to beep, and then the doors opened. I'm gonna check the mail. See you at home, I said. Drake gave me a nod and pulled into the neighborhood. While I was getting it, I happened to notice one of our neighbors had their blinds open to their kitchen. They were standing and staring off into space, figuring they were drunk or high. I walked back to the apartment. Drake was in the living room, rolling a joint. Hey, man, are you gonna want some of this? Maybe in a bit. Did they ever fix the fridge? Nope, still leaking. And the water's fucking up now too. I went into the kitchen to see what he meant. The kitchen faucet made a kind of gurgling noise before water came from it. Yeah, we better stick with bottled water for a while, I told Drake. He nodded and took a drag of the joint. I decided to partake after all, and we passed it back and forth. I made a bowl of caramel cheddar seasoned popcorn. Then we spent the next several hours watching My Name is Earl. How the hell does Darnell put up with Joy? I asked. Because he's a real one, Drake replied. Hey, speaking of relationships, how have things been going between you and Kelly? Oh, well, a couple of weeks back we got to talking and thought it would be best if she dumped you, right? Yeah, I replied after a pause. What about you and Amy? Same boat. She told me I was holding her back or some shit like that. All that happened on the 2nd. I turned to him in shock. She broke up with you on your birthday? That's fucked up. Drake shrugged. Not like that's the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I thought back to our time in that abandoned hospital and silently agreed with him. Well, at least it's only us we have to worry about now, I said. Yep. By 1, we figured we should get to bed, then got up and went to our rooms. My rest was relatively peaceful, only being interrupted by the occasional noisy neighbor or nightmare. It was around 8 when we were woken up by what we thought were people arguing outside. The hell they on about now? Drake asked when we were out in the hall. It's probably Van and Roscoe again, I replied as I was rubbing my eyes. Those two were like fire and gasoline, living next to each other, and their conflicts got heated enough for the police to be called on numerous occasions. The former was a blue, no matter who, supporter, while the latter was an avid red waver, although we didn't care much for either of them. Van was the most tolerable. I've had some decent chats with him, so long as it doesn't involve politics. Meanwhile, whenever I talk with Roscoe, which was usually prompted by him, things would always go awry. He'd somehow find a way to bring up how his people were going to take back the White House. Then this would be followed by something along the lines of, I don't have anything against X group of people. It's a good thing I always have conversation-ending responses ready. This is why I hate election years, Drake said. Guess we'll have to leave out the back again. The reason for this is that they tended to go on for a while, and they tried to rope us into their debates. Right, so what are you doing today? Probably hitting the gym. You want to come with me? Not this time. I'll be shopping. Cool, see you in a bit. We went out, each of us going to our respective vehicles. While driving to the front gate, I noticed things seemed to be more chaotic than what we've become accustomed to. Several people seemed to be in a confrontation, and indeed, Roscoe and Van were among them. I didn't get a good view of it since I was driving. What I saw was one person attempting to bite another on the shoulder, and then they were elbowed to the ground. Rolling my eyes, I waited for the gate to open, then pulled out of the neighborhood. While Walmart wasn't the best place to shop, it was cheap, at least comparably. I arrived and parked about 12 minutes later. I knew it would be busier than usual. Luckily, I've been updated on my vaccines, so I wasn't too worried about getting close to anyone. That said, anyone coughing still received a wide berth. What I didn't expect when I went in was the emptiness of the store. This directly contradicted the number of cars I saw outside. Not to mention, while walking through the store, I only saw a handful of employees. Ours must be getting cut something fierce, I thought. Not thinking much more about it, I proceeded and filled my buggy. It was when I was in the cereal aisle, deciding if I wanted to get some Cocoa Pebbles or Cinnamon Toast Crunch. Well, the off-brand versions, I should say. Gotta make that EBT money stretch. As I was saying, I was busy trying to choose, when out of my peripheral, I noticed a man coming from the other side of the aisle. Instantly, I noticed their lack of shoes, and that they were shuffling their feet and taking a step forward. Instead of walking normally, they gave me a blank, glassy stare that caused me a wave of unease. 2 possibilities occurred to me then. Either this was a person with mental issues, or they were fucked up on drugs. Given our town, the second one was more likely. Nonetheless, I figured it would be a dick move not to see if they wanted help. Hey, are you alright? I asked. He kept staring at me, his expression unchanged. We shared a few moments of awkward silence before I realized this was a lost cause and headed elsewhere in the store. He also turned to leave, and as he did, maybe it was a trick of the light, but I could have sworn I saw a wound in the back of his head. Continuing my trip, I was heading to the meat and seafood section when a scream nearly made me abandon my skin. It came from one of the frozen food aisles. I stopped my cart and peeked over. I wanted to see what was happening, then try to find a security guard, Unfortunately, in light of what I witnessed, I don't think an overweight, middle-aged guy would have made much of a difference. There were 5 people all crouched around something. Judging by the shrieking, it was the person I heard only seconds ago. I was about to leave my buggy there and go for help when I noticed a coppery smell, followed by seeing a pool of blood form under the group. My mouth fell open in horror and disgust at the squishy crunching sounds that followed. I didn't know whether the cause of this was drugs or whatever, but I had a new plan: getting the hell out of there. It wasn't as if there was anything I could do to help. At best, I could report what I saw to the authorities and let them handle it. Forsaking the meat and dairy aisle, I went straight to the exit, hoping someone would be near the checkout. It was easier said than done, because I found more of them. About 12 of them were shambling where I needed to go. I got a side profile of one of them, and with revulsion, I registered that half of their face was missing. Are these people goddamn zombies? I thought, still not fully processing it. My mind flashed back to our time in that hospital, and I briefly wondered if Erickson was somehow behind this. After all, he didn't seem the type to let go of grudges. The answer to that could wait. I needed some type of escape plan. My only saving grace is that I was fortunate enough to not have any squeaky wheels. I thought about the emergency exit. The issue was, I wasn't sure exactly what I was dealing with. If that guy in the cereal aisle was any indicator, they were slow. Then again, he could have been in the early infection stages. I was drawing from a lot of zombie media. For all I knew, triggering the alarm would cause a horde of them to come after me. If they were runners, I wasn't sure if I would be able to make it to my car by myself, let alone while pushing a bunch of groceries. I know what you're thinking. Just leave the damn buggy. It's not worth your life. My response to that was, I didn't want all my time shopping to go to waste. Therefore, I devised a distraction. I took 1 can of mixed vegetables and chucked it at a random aisle. I managed to hit a shelf, sending several things crashing to the floor. The zombies dashing to the noise confirmed my fears. Wasting no time, I made a beeline. I passed through the tools section and grabbed 2 axes. I made it outside, ready to bask in relief. Several of them were already there. I'd only been in the store for an hour and a half. I guess things can go to hell fast. Speaking of, that was where I was about to go, because if God exists, I was going to have some choice words for him. I felt as if I was an antelope to a pride of starving lions. The difference was, I didn't have the benefit of being nearly as fast. Even if I was, the sheer number of them would have made evasion virtually impossible, and they were headed right for me. That's when the sound of a truck engine reached me. I turned to see Drake's truck barreling down the hill, heading to the parking lot. The driver swerved, knocking the zombies away. The passenger window came down. "Get the fuck in," Drake yelled at me. "Can you help me with this real quick?" We put everything in the truck bed, including the cart. Then we sped out of there like frogs in a boiling pot. "How did you know I was in trouble?" I asked. "It's Walmart." "Fair enough. So what happened to you?" "Long story. First we need to find somewhere safe." "What about the apartment?" He shook his head and informed me it was overrun. "Shit's nuts, man. People were literally getting ripped apart on my way to get you." "I saw something similar. Thanks, by the way." "Don't mention it." Eventually, we stumbled across a motel in a secluded area of town. Nobody was there, but the entrance was unlocked. We made sure to do a once-over, making sure we wouldn't have any unexpected guests. Any doors where scratching and growling came from, we steered clear of. After that, we got the groceries in and took them to the kitchen. As Drake was putting them away, I tried calling for help, only to see that I couldn't. My phone said unable to make call. Try again. I did with the same result. I still had bars, so I was confused. I attempted going online and was greeted by this message. Due to unforeseen circumstances, your connection is indefinitely restricted. Sorry for the inconvenience. What the fuck does that mean? Drake asked after I showed him. I don't know. This shit's wild, man. None of my browsers or other apps could make a connection. Luckily, the Play Store was working fine, and I downloaded a VPN. Granted, it's the free version, which makes my internet torturously slow. At least it's enabled us to have some connection to the outside world, and it's also how I'm able to post all of this. Right now it's a little after midnight, and we're about to crash. Tomorrow I'll explain Drake's side of things, and hopefully we have a way out of here. If past experiences are any indicator though, I don't think I should be optimistic. And the horse shit continues. Part 2. Before I give an update, I'm going to explain Drake's perspective of events from yesterday. He told me he'd also seen something odd during our neighbor's scuffle. 2 women were grappling on the sidewalk near the mailboxes when one bit the other in the leg and then had a heel driven into her eye in retaliation. On the way to the gym, Drake was blasting Before I Forget by Slipknot to get himself hyped up. This drew him a lot of attention from people he described as being unusually pale. At the time, he dismissed this as a trick of the light. Arriving at the gym, he got out with his metallic water bottle filled with purple Gatorade. As he was closing the door to his car, he became aware that an old woman was staring at him from across the street. Trying to be friendly, he gave her a wave. She didn't even do so much as blink. Drake disregarded the interaction and went in. The gym was part of our local community center, making it free to use, provided we had memberships. He didn't see anyone upon entering. Given that our gym typically received less traffic on weekends, he didn't think much of this. However, much like my trip to Walmart, he found the contrast of cars parked outside to the absence of people inside strange. Nobody was present at the check-in desk, and Drake waited there. A minute or so passed with him, drumming his fingers on its surface, before he decided hitting the bell might get someone's focus. When several attempts of that failed, he tried calling out. "Hello? I need to check in. Anyone there?" All he got in reply was his voice eerily echoing off the walls. Finally, he grew impatient, figuring if someone caught him, he could explain himself. Getting to the gym, he was flabbergasted at finding 2 things. It was devoid of people, and there were weights scattered everywhere. It was as if a fight had broken out the hour before he arrived. What the hell happened here? He wondered. In addition to his shock, it was also annoying that nobody had bothered to help clean the place up. A clear workout space is basic etiquette. Therefore, Drake took it upon himself to return everything where it belonged. With that out of the way, he was ready for his training session and began with stretching. Ordinarily, he'd be doing bench pressing. Seeing how he didn't have a spotter, though, he stuck to bicep curling. Then he did some squats, followed by cardio on the treadmill. His method alternates, while I prefer sticking to one thing for a set time. By then, he was about halfway into his exercise. We try to aim for 3-hour days, 2 if work has been grueling. Taking a break, he drank some of his Gatorade. His stomach growling made him regret that his only meal up until then was a PB&J. Thankfully, some vending machines were nearby, and he went to one to get himself some protein bars. Drake spent a few minutes deciding which flavors to get, before settling on one blueberry and a peanut butter chocolate. He punched in the numbers, and then watched the coil push the bar to the front. He put in the numbers again. Unfortunately, the other bar got jammed. "Are you fucking kidding me?" he muttered, and tried shaking the machine. The noise of his actions reverberated throughout the building. This is why he was unaware of the footsteps approaching his location. He eventually succeeded in freeing his second protein bar and knelt to get his food. As Drake was standing back up, he caught a glimpse of something in the glass's reflection. A figure was approaching him from behind. He turned around to find one of our gym buddies, a guy by the name of Frank. "Hey, man, when did you get here?" Drake smiled. "This place has been feeling like a ghost town." Frank looked at him in a manner reminiscent of the old lady from earlier. His breathing was irritated and raspy. "Hey, are you good?" Drake asked. He then became aware of a smell that he described as being able to give roadkill baked in the sun for a week a run for its money. His nose reflectively scrunched. "No offense, Frank, but you might want to hit the showers." Frank came closer. Until then, his body was partially obscured by the wall. Now that it was in full view, Drake was nearly shitting himself. Frank's right arm, as well as a massive portion of his ribs, were missing. Blood coated the wounds, dripping onto the floor. All the while, a deep hunger in his eyes was focusing entirely on Drake. "Oh shit. He's a fucking zombie," he thought. He hardly had time to process this. As Frank threw himself at him, reflexes on point, Drake got out of the way, causing Frank to hit the vending machine screen. Thinking fast, Drake tripped it over, making it crash down on top of him. With that worry out of the way, he left the vending area. His eyes bugged out at what he saw after turning the corner. A horde of zombies were shambling through the hall. What was fortunate was none of them were aware of Drake's presence. This changed when he felt his phone vibrate. His heart dropped into his stomach. He had forgotten about setting an alarm to end his snack break, and it went off, blaring "Pump Up the Jam." All eyes, both whole and dangling, as well as empty sockets, were concentrated on him. "Why does this shit keep happening to us?" he asked aloud while taking a step back. I pointed out that it's only happened twice, to which he replied it's twice too many. The zombies were after him, like white on rice. With a scream, he turned tail and hauled ass. He tried going for the exit. To his dismay, more of them were there. His next best course of action was going back to the gym room. He got in, kicked away the door wedge, and slammed it shut. He was able to lock it before the zombies came charging. They were snarling and clawing at the window. Red drool flew from their mouths, as if it was Thanksgiving, and Drake was the turkey in the oven. He recognized a handful of people among them, including our other gym buddies, and even some families. The most disturbing thing was how many families had been turned. Drake told me he saw several toddlers missing body parts. One girl didn't have eyes, and a boy's jaw had been ripped off. I count myself lucky not to have come across anything that intense yet. Drake stepped away from the door and pulled out his phone. He dialed 911 and hit call. It seemed as though it would go through, until the unable to send screen popped up. "Fucking bullshit," he hissed. The sound of the window cracking caught his attention. "Oh, hell no." As they broke the door open, stumbling in, Drake went over to one of those racks, grabbing some 10-pound weights. As a zombie was running at him, he two-hand underthrew it. Luckily, the conventional destroy the head applied in this instance. The metal made contact with exposed bone with a sickening crunch. Drake threw up on the spot, recovering in time to dodge one trying to grab at him. Another attempted swiping at him with its claws. He ducked, seizing a kettlebell and then swinging it upward. The zombie he hit was knocked back and fell into a few others, making them tumble. Others climbed over their fellow infected in pursuit of him. Drake thought fast and scaled the weight rack. The zombies followed suit. As two were about to reach him, he kicked off the top dumbbell. getting them by their necks. Several more tried. They were relentless in their pursuit, and he also knocked them away with a kettlebell. Looking around, Drake saw a high window. If he got a good jump in, he would be able to grab hold of the bars containing the ceiling lights. The factors going against him, aside from sweaty palms, was that he needed something to break the glass with. This meant he needed to monkey bar it while holding the kettlebell. Ever since our time in that abandoned hospital, we made it a point to improve our physical health. This paid off. Drake's arms were burning from the exertion. When he was nearly done, he almost lost his grip. The hand with the kettlebell slipped. Drake yelled, having only one arm for support. In this position, he would have just one shot. Fortunately, his upper body strength endured. He threw the kettlebell, shattering the window. Drake swung himself to it and crouched, ensuring the coast was clear. After confirming it was, he dropped down. He raced to his truck, hitting the unlock button on his keys. As he was putting his keys in the ignition, more zombies came from behind some shops. He turned it, the engine revved up, and then immediately shut off. Our vehicles need some serious tune-ups, he shrieked. God fucking damn it, he shrieked. Stupid fucking Ford piece of shit. The zombies dogpiled on the rack as he kept turning the keys while slamming on the gas. Finally, it roared back to life. He put it in reverse and backed out, running over some of them. He guessed I'd still be at Walmart and sped over there to get me. That pretty much brings everything up to speed. As for what we've been doing today, we've mostly been scavenging for supplies, mainly guns. We do have the axes to defend ourselves with. However, close combat increases the risk of infection. We haven't been successful, which isn't surprising, since the gun stores in town are nowhere near the hotel. That said, we did get some things from a tool shop. The place was a mess, and there was evidence of a fatal struggle that had taken place. Judging from all the blood we found, not to mention the severed leg, the most useful things in the store were portable nail guns. My dad, when he was still around, worked in construction, and he showed me how they worked. He would even let me use it to shoot at some cans he set up in the backyard. Granted, letting an 8-year-old handle something such as that probably wasn't the best parenting. I suppose one too many beers will make anything seem like a good idea. At least it's helping us now. We've gone to the gun range every once in a while, so our aim has improved. As an aside, we were meaning to purchase a firearm. Lack of funding precluded us from saving up enough for one. I know it doesn't seem like a high priority, but if we're going to be moving around a lot for the foreseeable future, a fresh change of wardrobe is going to do us some good. We did find some things to keep us occupied. That's something a lot of movies don't touch on at all, I think. I mean, what do characters do between fighting, running, and talking? In our case, the thrift store had some DVDs, a player, some board games, and card games. Playing Monopoly with only 2 people has made us realize how overrated it is, and we called it quits an hour in. Uno has been another option. However, stun locking with arguments on what plays are allowed or who shouted Uno first has dampened the game's mood. We already tried seeing if our hotel TV has cable, with no luck. At least we got the PlayStation we grabbed hooked up. I've been watching Drake on Metal Gear Solid, while he's been watching me play Spyro. Other than that, movie marathoning has worked well as a distraction. For the most part, I should say, since this has mainly revolved around the Living Dead movies, I think it's a bit tasteless given what we're dealing with. Drake says it's going to prepare us more. Only time will tell how that will pan out, I guess. For now, I'm bunkering down for the night, or trying to anyway. Sleeping does not come easy When I hear those things outside, even if they are far away, I'll keep you all informed, nonetheless. See you tomorrow. Our mayor is garbage. Part 3. I can't believe we're in this situation. Not the zombies. I've already come to terms with that. Of all the people we could have ended up with, it had to be... I'm getting ahead of myself. This morning, Drake and me were discussing possible escape routes. Aside from the obvious human flesh carvers, the main obstacle will be getting around abandoned vehicles. The idea we came up with was going to the roof of the tallest building in town. It would give us the best vantage point to see if any clear roads were leading out. This did pose a risk, as it meant getting closer to the zombies. It's not as if that's a hazard that can be avoided outright. We prepared first with some stretching, followed by breakfast. We didn't want anything too heavy, since we'd be moving around a lot. We each had several bowls of instant fruit oats, with some bananas, bagels, and coffee. For our venture, we were bringing some protein bars I snagged at Walmart and some water. Alright, how long do you want to spend on this? I asked as we stood up from the table. I collected the styrofoam bowls and plasticware, as Drake replied, "We can't use our GPSs, so we'll have to write down the street names. Do you think the town hall might have some maps?" "Well, yeah, good idea. We have to keep an eye out for that." For self-defense, we had our nail guns as well as axes. The kitchen has some knife sharpeners that we tried on the heads, and we also made slings for them. Both of these seem to work pretty well. As I've mentioned, close melee is something we want to avoid. If we have to engage, though, we want it to end quickly. Drake waited by the entrance as I was brushing my teeth upstairs in our room. I think it makes more sense to do this after eating. Drake believes as long as you brush twice a day, it doesn't matter. I came back to see him on his phone. Noises from the game Tetris came from it. "Ready?" he asked. "Yeah, and I got the binoculars," I replied, holding them up as they hung around my neck. "Cool, let's go." We moved the chairs. We'd sat up in front of the doors and unlocked them, then stepped inside. "Are we taking your truck? Or do you think that might attract too much attention? It should be safe for a certain distance. We can walk the rest of the way." There's something especially unnerving about driving through a town that's devoid of people. To think, all this went down a few days ago. I guess it goes to show that things can go to hell fast. We went about 3/4 of the way, and then Drake pulled his car to a stop. "Remember we parked at the barber shop?" "Noted. Are you leaving the keys?" "No. Are you crazy? My car might get stolen." "What about the starting problem?" "Don't worry. I took a look at that the other day. It should be good." We got out, being mindful of how hard we closed the doors. We stayed as low as we were, making our way to the town hall. It was going smoothly, only having the occasional close calls. 2 zombies spotted us. We used our nail guns to make short work of them before they could alert any others. Reaching the town hall, we became apprehensive due to the entrance being ajar. "We might have company here. Stay sharp," Drake said. I glanced around, and my eye fell on the water fountain. "Hang on." I went over to it, reached into the water, and grabbed a handful of rocks. "What are those for?" "Distractions." We went up the steps, and then peered inside. Once confirming it was safe, we proceeded, locking the door behind us, in case any surprises wandered in. Since our steps echoed, we were making sure to move carefully. Every so often, I would peek through the binoculars to get a better view of what was ahead. "Hang on," I whispered. "What?" Drake replied as we both halted. Scanning the door ahead, I could see the reflection of several zombies along the marble flooring. "Get your weapons ready. We got a lot to clear out," I informed him. We each took cover behind the wall on opposite sides. I checked one of the rocks and sent it skittering across the floor. The moaning and growling of the living dead soon followed. The first of them shambled around the corner. Drake fired his nail gun, hitting it in the head. As soon as it collapsed, more were coming into view. I took out the next one, then Drake the one after. This repeated, and for a while, we were making quick work. "How many of them are there?" I asked as one was running at me. "They just keep coming." I fired, getting it in the throat. "Just keep it up. It's not like we'll be out of ammo anytime soon." One zombie that was just an upper torso had been clawing its way toward Drake. Being occupied with the others, he hadn't noticed it. "Hey, the floor!" I yelled. He gasped when it was almost to him and shot it in the eye. It reached out to him and then fell still. "Thanks." "Don't mention it." "Well, I guess that takes care of." "Gus, is something wrong?" Is it just me or did I hear something drip? We glanced at the floor behind us and saw a red split. We glanced up in time to see a zombie that was clinging to the ceiling, dropping down to try and pounce on us. We moved out of the way in time, screaming as we did. This thing was new. It scurried on all fours, snarling at us. We aimed and pulled our triggers only for nothing to happen. "They're jammed," I said. "No shit." We backed away slowly as it eyed us with a deep famine. Maybe it was the fear messing with my head, but I could have also sworn I could see the faintest hint of intelligence in its yellowed eyes. "Guess we'll have to do this the old-fashioned way," Drake said, and put a hand on his axe handle. I did the same. The crawling zombie let out a screech and lunged at us. Yanking out my axe, I swung, smashing the zombie across the face with the flat side and partially gashing its face with the edge. It was back almost as soon as it hit the wall. Assuming Drake was easier prey, it went after him. Unlike me, he had more time to get in position. Unfortunately, he misjudged the arc range of his swing. Instead of getting the zombie's head, he got it in the chest. "Gus, help!" he yelled, holding it back as it clawed at him while it was balancing on the axe blade. Drake tripped backward over a corpse and fell to the floor. All he could do was keep a leg up to stop being torn into. Heart pounding, I rushed over to him, and with one swipe, I buried my axe in the zombie's temple. It swayed to the side, and Drake shoved it away, immediately scooting back as soon as he did. I was gonna check on him, until I noticed the fucking thing was still moving. Raising my weapon, I brought it down like splitting firewood. At the moment of its cranium crunching, and bits of its brain getting stuck to my axe head, it stopped moving. I glanced at it, then the bits of grey matter, and found my breakfast making an unexpected upward exit. "You good?" Drake asked, patting me on the back. "Yeah, I just need a minute," I replied between deep breaths. My legs were wobbly, so I was steadying myself against the wall. It's a lot worse when it's up close. I know the feeling. The hall leading to the mayor's office was caked in dried blood. Under the light, there were scratch marks, as if people had been dragged away. Disturbed though that was, what unnerved us more was the state of our elected, a term I use loosely, leaders, workspace. Pushing the door open, we were greeted by a spotless office. Given what we dealt with earlier, this didn't sit right with either of us. Not to mention, all the rooms we passed were in complete disarray. "I'm guessing Snyder got out of Dodge when things went south," I said. Mayor Bill Snyder wasn't known for what he did, so much as what he didn't do. Ask anyone living along one of the many pothole-filled streets what they think about him. You'll be hard-pressed to get a flattering response. "Of course that good-for-nothing shit-sucker abandoned this town," Drake grumbled. "Whatever. Let's just find a map and then get to the roof." We got one from the desk along with a pen, and then took the stairs going up. "Start looking and let me know if you see anywhere viable. I'll make sure to mark it here," Drake said. Raising the binoculars to my eyes, I began searching. Cars are blocking most of the roads, I said. The police station is empty, though. No surprise there. When we first moved into town, we dealt with a break-in. We tried calling 911. However, after 10 minutes of having our stuff ransacked, we decided to handle things the baseball bat way. The cops then arrived promptly to take our statements 2 hours later. Hang on, that might work, I said hopefully. What might? I informed Drake that there was a dirt road behind one of the neighborhoods, stretching outside of town. He marked the route leading it there on the map. Alright, I say we head back and pack. That way we can... he said, trailing off. What? Do you hear that? I listened closely, only detecting the noises of roaming zombies. Then there was another sound. A rumbling that was familiar to us. Looking through the binoculars again, I saw Roscoe. He was in his white Hummer speeding through town. Behind him was some of his buddies, in their own vehicles, except for the last one. Drake, you might want to see this. His jaw dropped upon using the binoculars. They stole my fucking truck, he roared. Roscoe and his group drove by a building across from the town hall. Drake began foaming at the mouth, mentioning all the unspeakable things he would do to them. Hey, relax, man, I said. Let's talk with them. I'm sure we can smooth things. The person driving his truck made too sharp of a turn, going over a curve and crashing into a tree. Out, I finished. Stumbling out, the driver had a bottle of beer in one hand and a gun in the other. Drake's screaming caused birds to take flight. My heart sank, because this was the equivalent of ringing a dinner bell. Roscoe and his friends, on the other hand, were ecstatic, and not subtle about expressing it either. It's hunting time, boys, Roscoe hollered. They cheered and began firing at the zombies as they came. Maybe we should wait a bit, I said. We left the roof and decided to check the other rooms more thoroughly until the gunfire died down. Most of them didn't have much use. The last one, on the other hand, contained something unexpected. This one's locked, I said, jiggling the handle. Here, maybe we can wedge. Yelling, Drake smashed the window of it with his axe, then reached inside and unlocked it. Well, that works too, I guess. Stepping over broken glass, the office we entered was stacked with paperwork. I feel sorry for the poor bastard who had to work in here, I said. Hello. Gus, is that you? Peeking out from behind the desk was the familiar and disheveled face of Van. From his odor, he was overdue for a shower. What are you doing here? Drake asked. He explained that back in our neighborhood, he'd managed to get away. Without a car, the only place he could get to safety was the town hall. I've been sneaking into the kitchen and then back here for days. I don't know how I've managed to avoid them for so long. Do you know anything about why this is happening? I inquired. Sorry, I'm just as clueless as everyone else. Not to be too forward, but do you have anywhere safe I can stay? By the time all three of us were outside, Roscoe and his ilk were guzzling down beer. Several of them were dancing on Drake's truck. His grip on his axe handle tightened. I put an arm out in front of him and then spoke up. Excuse me. Aw, shit, Roscoe exclaimed. I thought you guys were dead. He noticed Van and frowned. Surprised to see you still kicking, pussy. Van smiled in return. And I see being a drunk fuck is still all you're good at. Sensing an altercation brewing, I intervened. Roscoe, listen. You do know the truck your friend is driving belonged to Drake, right? He blinked a few times, then glanced at it still smoking in front of the tree, and back at Drake. Oh shit, my bad, man. We saw it parked at the barber shop, and my buddy, Clint, knows how to hotwire that model. So we thought we'd take it for a spin. Well, I'm short one truck thanks to that, Drake replied, irritably. Don't sweat it, man. We can get you another one. Isn't that right, fellas? They answered yes in a rousing cheer. Want some beer? Roscoe asked. Not right now, I said. I was going to explain me and Drake's escape plan when all hell broke loose. From the roof of the building close to us jumped about a dozen of the crawling zombies. It all happened so fast, there was no time to warn anyone. The next thing we knew, there was panic shrieking and firing. Our encounter with one earlier made us better prepared for it, and we began hacking away. Even then, we survived by the skin of our teeth. Now it was me, Drake, Van, and Roscoe, staring down the brutalized remains of his friends. So we've been staying at a hotel, I said, averting my gaze from the aftermath of the carnage. Mind driving us there? Roscoe, still in shock, nodded. Then we got in his Hummer and rode in silence. That brings me to now. Trying to keep the peace between Roscoe and Van has been nothing short of migraine-inducing. Oh well, hopefully we'll be out of town tomorrow, so we won't have to deal with this anymore. Until then, I hope we can keep from losing our heads. Not the ideal situation, I can tell you that. Part 4. Things have finally calmed down here to something in the vicinity of peace. I'll try not to complain too much, since this is probably as good as it's going to get, with Van and Roscoe living under the same roof. Speaking of whom, I'll be sharing their sequence of events in case there may be anything to glean from them. I'll relay Roscoe's perspective since I heard it firsthand. This was the morning of my terrifying escape at Walmart, and Drake having to fight for survival in the gym. Roscoe was already down in the dumps since the court ruling last month. His no good two-timing bitch of an ex-wife, as he so eloquently put it, was able to convince the judge overseeing their custody case that a small apartment filled with booze and guns wasn't a safe place for two toddlers. Although it's not my place, I can't say I object to that ruling. To vent his frustrations, he and his buddies planned a weekend hunting trip, so they set off to set up camp about 4 hours from town. For the most part, the trip was an enjoyable experience, just shooting, joking, and drinking among friends. That said, Roscoe witnessed some things I think should be mentioned. The first is that some animals were acting out of sorts. There was a river by the campsite that many of them were drinking from. I know that animals get thirsty too. What Roscoe and the others found strange was that many of them were drinking from it simultaneously. Both predator and prey alike were standing side by side, lapping up water, but this went beyond thirst and into addiction. They were consuming such an enormous quantity that many of them threw up and collapsed. Many of them also appeared starved, like they hadn't eaten in days. While none of them were scared by this, it did rub many of them the wrong way. A deer approached their camp. Given that they are normally fickle creatures, this was odd. Yes, there are exemptions to this, and are somewhat trusting of humans. That's one reason a deer may not flee. The other is that there's nothing wrong with it. Brain disease in this case. Someone in the group pointed this out. Roscoe, being Roscoe, though, said, "I can still put it on my wall." And then he put a bullet in it point blank. Not very sporting, if you ask me. Then again, I suppose he needs a win every once in a while. Anyway, his friends weren't exactly happy about him firing off his rifle without warning in their vicinity. They proceeded to chastise him, throwing empty beer cans as they did. The mood went from peculiar to unnerving at what occurred next. One person in the group was the first to notice it. The animals had stopped drinking and were now staring at them. Even from that distance, everyone could tell there was something in their eyes that didn't sit right with any of them. It was a sharpened hunger, combined with distinct awareness. Nobody had seen anything like it, and many thought they would be attacked. Roscoe also mentions he remembers the animals being thin, like water was the only thing they were consuming. Neither humans nor animals would break eye contact. Even armed, Roscoe and his friends were severely outnumbered. Luckily for them, things didn't escalate to that point. The animals went back to what they were doing. By the time Roscoe got back to our neighborhood, the sun was rising, and he wanted to get the deer's head inside before anyone spotted him. I should mention at this point that deer hunting is only permissible during the winter months in our state. If reported, a violator will suffer a fine and possibly have their hunting license as well as their gun taken. In a stroke of bad luck, Van happened to come outside in that instant. He caught Roscoe carrying the deer's head and said he was going to report him, which led to their altercation. Moving on to Van, he had a conversation with Drake, who in turn told me about it. Van's job at the town hall mainly revolves around answering calls, shredding documents, sorting through files, and receiving all the complaints Snyder got on his computer. That sounds miserable as hell. Our jobs at Goodwill may not be the most lucrative, but at least we weren't working for a scumfuck like him. I'm not trying to hold that against Van. I understand people need to make a living. For his sequence of events, things were relatively normal, except they were having him shred way more documents than normal. Drake asked him if he noticed anything odd on them. He said he has to get rid of so many that there wasn't time to read even a single paper. He did overhear something peculiar on his day prior to his time off. He was getting back from a restroom break and walking past Snyder's office. He stopped when he heard yelling coming from it. Curious, he figured a little eavesdropping couldn't hurt. Of the bits and pieces he picked up on, he gathered that someone was trying to put pressure on Snyder over a deal, with whom we don't know. Well, it can't be confirmed that's what's happening now. The timing does raise a red flag. Van said that when Snyder left for the day, he looked rattled. From there, nothing else noteworthy happens until his fight with Roscoe. That brings us to today. While Hummers are loud and obnoxious, they're also roomy, and we took advantage of that, packing up the rest of the groceries. Then we were off. I helped by directing Roscoe to the road we were going to use. When we reached it, we realized the Hummer may be a bit too long to drive through it. "Fuck it," Roscoe said, flooring the gas. At first, it seemed as if the Hummer was stuck. He kept at it, and soon we heard branches begin cracking. Pushing our way through, we were on our way out. "By the way, what's the plan once we're done with this?" he asked. "I got a cousin me and Drake can crash with." Drake said, "What about you?" "I've got an uncle out of state who's a pretty cool guy. I'll have to give him a call." I turned to Van. "What about you?" "Me? I've got savings, so I'll be fine for a while. I'll probably stay at another motel or rented room until I can get back on my feet." "Of course, you'll be the only one of us who can save money working for that shit Snyder." Van once again gave Roscoe that customer service smile. "I get paid well because I'm good at what I do, unlike some people." Seeing Roscoe's glare in the rear view, Drake and I intervened. "Guys, can we please not do this shit right now?" Drake asked. "Once we're in the clear, have at it. But until then, let's try to get along." Drake and Van simmered down, only giving each other the occasional dirty look. We continued in silence, and were relieved when we finally reached the path's exit. "Thank Christ," Roscoe said. "That fucking scraping was driving me up the goddamn wall." All of us were glad town was behind us, or so we thought. I still had the binoculars, and once again, I glanced through them. What I saw nearly made my heart stop. "Hit the brakes!" I abruptly screamed. Roscoe slammed them out of reflex, giving us all whiplash. "The hell's the matter with you, Gus?" he asked sharply. Instead of answering, I handed him the binoculars. Upon raising them to his eyes, his face turned pale. It was the same when they were handed to Drake and Van. Someone set up a blockade at the town limit. If that wasn't bad enough, it was being guarded by people in SWAT armor and cops, several of whom we recognized. We also saw a handful wearing hazmat suits. However, the most disturbing thing is It turned out we weren't the only ones with our particular plan of escape. This was evidenced by the corpses being bagged away, with bullet wounds in their foreheads, as well as all the abandoned vehicles. They're keeping people here, I said. Yeah, it was a no-shit statement. I just needed to get it off my chest. Those government motherfuckers, Roscoe spat. But why the police working with them? Answering that was a whole other topic. We need to focus on the one at hand. Maybe we can cut through the forest on foot? Van suggested. That would take hours, Drake told him. They got snipers over there, which means they're probably checking the woods. Not to mention, we don't know how many zombies we might run into. You know what? I say we get the guns in the back and blast our way through these sons of bitches, Roscoe said. Roscoe, I hate to be the one to break it to you, but they basically have a small army. And there's 4 of only 3 who know how to use guns, I pointed out. Roscoe was about to object when a sniper bullet went through the windshield, piercing through his eye and seat and into the back seat directly above Van's shoulder. He slumped over lifeless, falling on the steering wheel and making his horn go off. We freaked the fuck out and crouched right before being met with a barrage. We have to get out of here, Drake shouted over the sound of shattering glass. You think we don't fucking know that? Drake snapped. If they hit one of the tires, it was game over for us. Drake shifted the Hummer in reverse and then put Roscoe's foot on the gas. Luckily for us, the path was straight, so backing out of it was relatively simple, provided us not getting shot at. When it was safe, we all straightened out. Drake opened the driver's door and pushed Roscoe out. Then he got in the seat. We didn't have time to catch our breath, since who should be waiting for us other than a horde of zombies? In hindsight, maybe all the noise we made snapping branches wasn't our stealthiest option, although in fairness to us, we thought we didn't have to worry about that. Like ants to sugar water, they were on us, breaking through holes in the windshield. Gus, Van, guns! Drake screamed, trying to drive with them clinging to the hood. Scrambling, we grabbed some pistols from the back. I undid the safety on one and tossed it to Drake. He caught it, and when a zombie broke through, he pulled the trigger. It rolled off and we ran over it, hearing a popping sound as we did. On his side, Van was screaming and panic firing. Don't waste ammo. It only takes one shot to the head to kill them, I yelled. I was covering both my window as well as the back windshield. I can't see anything like this, Drake exclaimed. A zombie managed to poke its head into the passenger side. Without looking, he put a round in it. We eventually managed to take them all out in time to realize we were heading for the edge of a cliff. Drake tried in vain to stop. The Hummer hit a curve and flipped on its side, rolling downward all the way. It stopped, now a wreck with smoke coming out of its hood. Then the engine went dead. Is everyone still in one piece? I asked. I felt something trickle down my face. When I went to wipe it away, there was blood on my palm. No, but I'll live, Drake replied. I think I fractured something, Van said, in pain. Roscoe's camping supplies included a first aid kit. We used it to mend our injuries as best we could. Okay, now where exactly are we? Drake asked. Where we'd ended up was another part of the woods that stretched on for miles. I don't know, I said. Do you think we can climb back up? Not in our condition, and besides, it's too flat. What should we do then? Drake glanced at the Hummer and then back to us. I think our best bet is to see if we can get this thing working again. Yeah, so things didn't turn out the way we hoped. I'm afraid we've been at this for hours with no luck. My phone battery is almost out, and I know it's only a matter of time until the zombies find us. We still have plenty of firepower, so the three of us can at least make a heroic final stand. Well, me and Drake anyway. If I don't update again, no, I want my last words to be, fuck this shit. Fuck it hard. Guess we're still kicking. Part 5. We're still working on how to get out of town. I mean, we're not dead, which I guess is a step in the right direction. We got the Hummer working again, and you'll all love this. We thought it shut off due to the wreck. Come to find out, Roscoe had forgotten to refuel it. We only realized this when by some miracle, Drake got the engine to turn and observed this on the fuel gauge. Typical of that moron to forget something like this, Van said. The dude just died. I know you and him hated each other, but don't be a fucking dick, alright? I replied. Van relented and kept his comments to himself. Okay, we know it works. Now, all we need is fuel, Drake said, rummaging through the back. I produced a container of gas. It seems safe right now, so I'll go out and refill it, I said. You might want to reload first, Drake advised. I heeded this, exchanging the clip of my pistol before hopping outside. We'd gotten lucky throughout the night, having avoided any encounters. Although, there were some close calls. Another one of those crawling ones wandered nearby. It got too close to Drake, and he stabbed it in the eye. The most significant one was one I encountered. We were doing rotating shifts, and it was my turn to keep watch. Everything was fine until I noticed a figure off in the distance. This thing was tall. We're talking a height that puts even Robert Wadlow to shame. Remember, the moonlight was my only source of visibility. I'm watching this monstrosity jittering about. It wasn't walking so much as striding. I thought about waking up Drake and Van so he could blast it away. Then I thought better, and figured I should take a closer look with the binoculars. Good thing I did. Otherwise, we'd be zombie food. What made me reconsider was what it did. Up close, it had several other distinct features. It was entirely bald, and had no eyes or a nose. I don't mean they were gouged out. There was only lumpy skin where they should have been. The head was constantly shifting directions, presumably listening for any potential prey. It stopped, and I realized it stepped on a boulder, about as big as the Hummer. I thought it was going to bypass it. What happened instead, that almost made me piss myself, was as follows. It picked it up in both hands and crushed it. Let me repeat that. It crushed a boulder the size of a fucking Hummer, like it was a clump of powdered parmesan. Somehow, I didn't think our weapons were going to cut it. Even if they did, the noises would surely attract other zombies. All I could do was keep quiet, in hopes it wouldn't wander to us. Then something happened that made my nuts retract. Behind me, Van sharply inhaled, and I realized he was going to snore. I'm not proud of what I did next. Acting on reflex, I punched him in the throat. He awoke, staring at me in a mixture of anger and confusion. Whatever he was going to say died in his throat. I already knew it was behind me before I turned around, having felt its hot breath on my neck through the broken window. Its breath was foul, like a decomposing body in a sewer, and it was making my eyes water. I would rather have been smelling weak old roadkill left a week in the humid heat. Fighting the body's natural impulses is the hardest thing a person can do. Right then, mine was wanting to make me puke. The zombie partially stuck its head in, growling as it did. Neither of us even did so much as breathe too fast. The seconds it remained in place were going by like hours. Finally, it decided it was wasting its time and went away. We still weren't going to make a sound until we were sure that thing was at least several miles away. On top of all this, we have no means of escape without getting shot. So yeah, things are kinda shitty. By then, the sun was peeking over the trees. We got Drake up and told him about what happened. "God damn," he had said. "Good thing none of us had any beans last night." As I was standing there, filling the tank, I started wondering what other shit we'd have to deal with. The regular zombies were already bad enough. Then we ran into the crawlers. And now we have to contend with those tall ones. I'm calling them lankers. Once I was through, I got into the passenger side. "Alright, now let's see if it did anything," Drake said, turning the ignition. The Hummer roared to life, making us all ecstatic. Now we're getting somewhere. But how exactly are we getting out of here in this oversized thing? Van asked. The area where we'd ended up was a bad spot for any car, let alone a Hummer. After glancing around, Drake replied, very carefully. He was able to pull some maneuver, where the tires on my side were hugging the base of the cliff. Meanwhile, Drake's side was snapping through branches. Eventually, we found a way back up to the road. "Alright, we're back in business," I said, then looking at our desolate town, added, "for the most part." Our first course of action was heading back to the hotel. This shifted when we came to hordes of zombies shambling in front of it. "They're here now too," Drake said. "Probably migrating," I replied. That raised the question, what would happen to the zombies if they ran out of food? Do they actually need to eat? Or are their cravings more akin to addiction? Whatever the case, it was bad news for us. "Where are we supposed to go now?" Van asked. "They had to come from somewhere, which means wherever they left should be safe," Drake responded. "Alright, and how exactly do we go about figuring out where that is?" "We go the opposite way they are." "Hang on," I said, mentally tracing the distance. "Won't that take us back to the apartments?" Sure enough, it did. We parked at the convenience store down the road. "Gus, what do you see over there?" Drake asked. "There's a handful of zombies," I replied with the binoculars to my eyes. "What kind?" "Just the regulars. Do you want to try and snipe at them?" "Sounds good. I'll handle it. And you two take care of the stragglers." We got in position with 2 sniper rifles. Drake climbed onto the Hummer roof, while I was going to be covering him on the ground. Meanwhile, Van would be warning us if anything came from behind. "Why don't I get a gun?" he asked. "You panic too much," Drake told him. "Ready, Gus?" I cocked my weapon. "Go for it," I said. Things occurred uneventfully under the given circumstances. Drake sniped at the zombies that were further away, and I got the ones attempting to climb over the fence. Once that was over, we drove up to the gate. Drake used Roscoe's keycard, causing it to beep and then open. "Figures it's working now," Drake said. Driving through, we could see corpses covering the sidewalk, and grass that had been mostly eaten away. From what I glanced at, I saw severed heads, feet, hands, and what may have been someone's genitals. I didn't think this place could get any shittier, but here we are, I said, trying to lighten the mood. "Do we really have to stay here?" Van asked. "For now. Do you want to crash in our apartment, or are you heading back to your place?" Van looked at a man by a fire hydrant, with his intestines hanging out. "I'll stick with you guys if it's all the same to you." Once parked, we turned to the trunk to gather the groceries. While our backs were turned, we heard the sound of several guns being clicked. "Turn around slowly." We did so to see an old lady with a revolver and a cane. Her face was covered in dirt. With her were some people, also armed. We squinted. "Mrs. Shiva?" Drake said in a perplexed tone. She wasn't known for having a nice demeanor. If anyone got on her bad side, whether by making too much noise or just looking at her funny, she would pelt them with rotten fruit. Nobody knows where she gets it. "Damn right. We couldn't help but notice you and your friends have some food and weapons. You wouldn't mind sharing with us, would you?" "I mean, we could negotiate." She pressed the barrel of her gun to his chest. "On second thought, we're feeling generous. So we've managed to survive countless horrors for the better part of a week, only to be robbed blind. Mrs. Shiva had people search through the Hummer to take whatever they deemed valuable." Well, this sucks, I said. Quiet, she snapped. Now, tell us what you saw out there. Why should we? She poked me with the gun. Oh, right. We relayed to her what we'd encountered, and how we were effectively being trapped in town. Dahem dear government bastards, she replied. The IRS will have my savings when they pry it from my cold, dead hands. She then asked the others if they got everything, to which they replied yes. Thanks for this shit, suckers. Mrs. Shiva laughed while shuffling away. How the hell did she end up being the one in charge? I wondered aloud. That's a weird phenomenon, where in a survival situation, the worst qualified somehow become the leaders, just because they happen to be more assertive. I don't know, Drake said. Let's check if we have anything left. Then we gathered up everything, bringing it inside and laying it on our table. Luckily, Mrs. Shiva forgot to have people check us, so we still had our handguns. As for everything else, that would remain to be seen. Okay, we have the 2 axes, the pistols, 2 boxes of Jiffy cornbread mix, 5 bags of dried mixed beans, a box of sweet tea, and I found this bag of spicy chili Doritos under one of the seats, I said, taking stock of everything. What do we have here already? I know we still have like half a pack of bottled water and some gas station food from the other day, Drake replied. The stuff here should last us at least a few days. I mean, we could try going back over to Walmart. I thought about Drake's suggestion. It wasn't a bad idea. The issue was we had no way of knowing if the zombies had left that area, or more had gone there. Furthermore, what if stronger ones were now there? What about the convenience store we were just at? Van said. Oh yeah, I replied. It didn't look like it had been broken into, so there's bound to be some good stuff in there. Why hasn't anyone else gone over there then? Because they're short-sighted, Drake told me. I say we get started on boiling some beans and try to work out a plan. To escape? Ben responded to him. You saw what happened to Roscoe. They're not letting anyone out. Then why not just bomb the town or something and be done with it? Our town was isolated. Therefore, it wouldn't be too much of a stretch for them to have the ability to do something like that and sweep it under the rug. I don't know, Ben said. Maybe it's too costly or something. Explosions aren't exactly cheap. Whatever the case, it doesn't change the fact we're stuck here. You know you were way too defeatist, Drake replied. Van responded with a shrug. Hang on, I said. I think I have an idea. Shoot, Drake replied. We cut through the woods. Gus, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we already tried that. Not on foot. I explained that I planned for us to walk straight through, instead of taking the dirt road again. It's unlikely the government people would be there, since there are only a few roads leading into town. So, to sum up everything, we gather what we can, and walk until we come across a main road. I finished. Great plan, but there's only one problem, Van said. What? There's a bunch of zombies outside that want to eat us alive, and you're talking a minimum of 2 days straight out there. We didn't see any in the woods, Drake pointed out. I think if we keep moving, we should get through it okay. I mean, you can stay here if you want. Me and Gus aren't gonna make you come with us. Van considered this and said, I'll have to sleep on it. That sounded like a good idea, seeing as how we were going to wind down anyway. Right now, the sun is setting. I don't see any zombies outside right now, but when I open the back door, I can hear their cries of hunger being carried by the wind. I wonder if any other neighborhoods have managed to hold down the fort. If they have, maybe that's where they're heading. Drake is setting up my laptop with an HDMI cable to our living room TV. I have a lot of movies downloaded, so that'll be good to keep our mind off things until tomorrow. Wish us luck. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have some stove popcorn to make. We may be short on cash, but at least we're safe. I think. Things have become complicated recently, and that's saying something considering what we've been through up until now. We needed to set out early to avoid Mrs. Shiva and her goons. Before we did, we snuck over to Roscoe's place. His apartment number was on his house key, so it wasn't hard to find. Upon stepping inside, we were greeted by the sight of several hunting rifles resting by the couch. "That checks out," Van said. I went to check Roscoe's room, while Drake went into the kitchen. "He's got some leftover pizza." "Wait, no, never mind. It's gone bad." Over Roscoe's bed hung a painting of Donald Trump. This wasn't surprising. I went to his closet, opened it, and found several sleeping bags and camping packs there. I came back into the living room with them. "Hey, I think we can use these," I said, tossing one to Drake and another to Van. The former caught it and the other fumbled, dropping it. He squatted to pick it up. "Gus?" "Yeah?" "Have you seen the kitchen? Roscoe had a ton of bottled water for some reason." "Oh, yeah. I think he mentioned one time that he heard water from the sink makes you gay." I can't lie, he was weird. "Yeah, so you want to grab some cases? I can carry a few. Just keep an eye out for trouble." I stacked some and lifted them. We also found some metal thermos cups that Van held onto. "I don't see anyone," he said after stepping outside. We followed him out, making our way to the Hummer. Drake had his gun in hand and was behind us, constantly looking over his shoulder. We got to the Hummer and unlocked it. That's when a bullet whizzed past my temple and hit one of the taillights. "So, you are holding out on us?" Mrs. Shiva screamed from her kitchen window. "Fuck, get inside now," Drake yelled, yanking the doors open. We threw our stuff in before jumping inside ourselves. In the rear view, we could see the rest of our neighbors, armed with bats and pipes chasing after us. "Start the fucking car," I urged, and then another hole formed in the back windshield. Drake cranked the ignition and backed up. Then we were out of there, like cows escaping a slaughterhouse. We didn't even slow down when we came to the gate. Drake crashed through it, as the screams of Mrs. Shiva and the others became faint cries. "Okay, so we're on track for the most part," I said. "Do you think the convenience store is too close now? I don't want them coming after us." "Guys," we heard Van interject. We glanced in the rear view again to see several cars gaining on us. The one at the front was a van, being driven by Mrs. Shiva. "Oh my god," Drake said. "Gus, lock and load." "Already on it. Be mindful of the tires." I loaded a rifle and got ready. The sound of metal on metal echoed throughout the car as we were being fired at. Drake tried taking several turns to lose them, but they stayed on our tail. I took a deep breath, then aimed out one of the car's windows and shot at one of the car's tires. I made my mark, resulting in it swerving and crashing into another vehicle. Both spun out of control until it was only Mrs. Shiva left. "Hold still," she yelled over the rushing wind. "My eyes aren't what they used to be." Unfortunately for her, there was a pothole in the road. It damaged her front tire, causing her to swerve and plow straight into a tree at full speed. We stopped just in time to see it crashing down, breaking through her windshield. "God damn," Drake said. "I mean, she might still be alright," I commented. The tree had gone through some wires. One of them fell on a branch, setting it ablaze. Well, at least it was quick. "Oh Christ, I'm burning! Oh Christ, I'm burning!" Mrs. Shiva shrieked. We sat there in silence, listening while her cries died down. "Drake, what time is it?" I asked. "About 12 till 6. Today was going to be a long day. We got back on track with our plan and proceeded to the convenience store. We got out and surveyed the damage. "This thing's tough," I said. "Does anyone want to talk about how messed up that all was?" Van asked. "Yeah, it was pretty fucked," Drake replied. "But what's done is done. Let's grab what we can and get out of here." We tried the door, finding it was unlocked. Inside, a far from pretty sight was waiting for us. Blood stains covered the wall behind the counter. Out of morbid curiosity, I peeked over it, seeing only a hand and a shoe with the foot still attached. A shudder ran through me. "Hey Gus, what do you see back there?" Van asked. "You don't want to know." We started surveying what would be best to bring with us. "I think we should focus on protein," I said. "Like trail mix?" Drake replied. "It's got fruit too." "I hate trail mix, too many raisins," Van complained. "What about these?" I asked, cocking a thumb to some protein bars. Something else caught my eye. "Hang on," I said, bending over and picking something up. "We can't be caught dead without this." I held up a pack of toilet paper. "Good thinking," Drake said. "Van, grab some, will you?" Van stared down at it with a grimace. "I bet it feels like sandpaper." He grumbled, but began gathering as many as he could anyway. While he did, we filled our 3 bags with what we could. Then we took everything back to the Hummer and got back on the road. "Hey, Drake?" I said as he was closing the trunk. "What?" "So, I've been thinking, if this works and we make it out of here, we're not exactly going to be well off afterward. Do you think maybe we should see if a store happens to have some loose change lying around, if you catch my drift?" I gestured to the convenience store. About 6 minutes later, we were driving down the road. So there was about $600 in the register, which makes $200 for each of us, I said. "And there's more in the safe if we can get it open." The safe was in the back next to Van. "I can't believe you guys stole this from the store. It's not like anyone's using it," Drake said. "Besides, the guy who ran the place was stingy as hell. One time, he tried to charge me double on something. I had to argue with him about it for 2 minutes straight, so we aren't beating ourselves up about this." "How do you think we should get it open?" I asked. "I don't know. We'll figure something out." We guessed that there were blockades set up at every exit out of town. We also assumed that there will be more people active where we tried to get out last time. Instead of going there, we went to the woods on the opposite end of town. "Remember, there's no turning back after this," Drake said, "so only take the necessities. I still want to see about opening the safe though." While he was talking, I was glancing among the trees. One of them seemed odd to me and swayed strangely in the wind. Then I realized with a chill that it was moving. "Lanka," I choked out. Drake and Van turned in time to see it sprinting out of the woods. In a flash, it was to us. We got out of the way as it swiped at us with one of its clawed hands. Its nails dug into the Hummer's back door, yanking it out. I was thinking, maybe if we kept still and tried to keep from shitting ourselves, it would go away. Drake, thankfully, seemed to be on the same wavelength as me. Van, however, was not. He screamed, darting away. The Lanka pursued him, giving us time to arm ourselves. As Van was circling back around, we raised our weapons, squeezing the triggers. As soon as it was focused on us, we knew to split up to divert its attention. Drake managed to get some shots into it before he had to retreat. While the Lanka went after him, I aimed at its legs. This appeared effective, as it let out a cry of pain that sounded like when a microphone is held up to a speaker. The good news was it was no longer after Drake. The bad news was I was now its target. "Drake, shoot it in the back of its knees!" I yelled, sprinting as fast as I could. I slid under the Hummer and came out the other side. In spur of the moment planning on my part, I opened the back door and slammed it shut. This succeeded in fooling the Lanka as I snuck behind it, getting its weak spot point blank. Unfortunately, I misjudged the distance. The next thing I knew, it was swinging at me with an object in hand. I managed to raise my gun to block it, and if I hadn't, I wouldn't be writing this. Wood splintered as it was broken in half. I observed the world doing several cartwheels as I was rolling along the ground, before coming to a stop at the base of a tree. "Gus!" Drake yelled. The pain was so immense I couldn't even get a breath out. The lanker was about to rip into me, until Drake distracted it. "Guys!" Van cried out in alarm. I tilted my head up, seeing a metric shitload of zombies racing towards us. Well, we're fucked, I thought. In an unexpected turn of events, though, the lanker was now shrieking at them. It went after them, grabbing two by their heads, crushing them like watermelons under a hydraulic press. I took the opportunity to examine where I'd been struck. Touching my abdomen yielded pain. Thankfully, nothing seemed to be broken, just some bruising I would need to deal with later. I guess I got lucky that I was knocked away instead of grabbed. If the lanker was smarter, this would be a different story. The other zombies were crawling all over it, gnawing as they did. A crawler saw me in a vulnerable state and tried capitalizing on the opportunity. It pounced and my butt clenched. Then a bullet went through its head. Drake rushed over, helping me up. "Thanks again, man." "No problem. Let's run into the woods while they're occupied," Van said. "But our stuff is over there," I told him. "We won't last long without it." We both looked at Drake. "Let's see how this plays out a little longer," he said. For a while, it seemed like the lanker would be the victor. Then its knees buckled as they chewed through. We watched on, mouths agape. In a move of desperation, it picked the safe back up, swinging it wildly. The zombies previously all over the lanker were now a red paste, and it was crawling feebly on the ground. "I got this," Drake said. He went over to it and shot at its legs, blowing them off. It tried swiping at him, but he'd already backed away. It attempted to stand on its stumps. When it lifted its head, Drake jammed the barrel of his gun down its throat, pulling the trigger. With a last twitch, it was no longer a threat. "Are you sure it's dead?" Van asked. "I blew out the back of its head. Of course it's dead," Drake replied, then threw a rock at the lanker to be sure. "Yep, as a doornail." Drake came over and helped me up. "Are you alright?" he asked. "I'll live." "Good, let's get our things." Van was already doing that. "My God, this is heavy," he grunted as he pulled it onto his back. "Get used to it," Drake told him. I glanced around, in case we'd have to deal with any more unexpected threats. And that's when I noticed the dented to shit safe lying on its side with the door open. It didn't take long to count the money inside. There was a little over 8,000 in cash that we divided among the three of us. Thus, our hike began at last. We walked for 8 hours, encountering zombies along the way. Most of the time it was simple to pick them off. The greatest problem came when some tried attacking us from above. I am so glad me and Drake's reflexes are on point. Something unusual we stumbled upon is whatever had been zombifying people has spread to animals. Long story short, there was a zombie grizzly bear ripping into another bear and its cubs. We thought we would have to deal with this monstrosity. Luckily, it didn't appear to find us appetizing. That said, it was emitting a deep growl after it noticed us, so we got the message to steer clear of it. Eventually, Van told us his feet were aching and suggested we should rest. "I guess we can stop for a bit," I said. "Right, Drake?" "Sure. I was getting hungry anyway." We sat down, setting up our packs to rest against. Me and Drake took out some trail mix, while Van unwrapped a protein bar. "Hey," he said to us, "I got some of these if you want to add them to your water." He held up some flavoring packets. "Hell yeah," Drake replied. "Toss them here." "Actually, I was thinking I could take care of it for you while you guys set up camp, since it's going to be dark in a couple of hours." "Good point. Gus, help me gather some firewood." We did so and threw them into a pile. Van came back to us with our thermos cups. Drake, yours is blue raspberry, and Gus, yours is green apple. We thanked him and enjoyed the rest of our meal. Halfway through my drink, I was feeling lightheaded. Hey, Drake, do I look alright? I turned to him and noticed he too was in the same condition as me. I don't, he replied with his voice trailing off. We passed out. When we awoke, it was dark and Drake was cussing up a storm. What happened? I asked, shaking off my fatigue. That son of a bitch robbed us, Drake replied. Look! He showed me our wallets, which were stripped of cash, and he left this. I was handed a crumpled piece of paper with this message crudely written on it. Sorry to do this. Years of working for the mayor have taught me people can be bribed, so that's what I'm doing. You won't find me again, but I wish you the best of luck. I clenched my fist around it. He robbed us. Yeah, I just said that. Well, what are we going to do now? Get moving, I guess? I can't believe this. How did we get our shit stolen twice in 2 days? We wondered how Van would survive on his own. Then again, he did have a knack for avoiding trouble, as he was able to before we bumped into him. After walking for some time, we saw an orange light in the distance. I think that's a campfire, I exclaimed. Do you think it might be Van? If it is, I'm going to have some words for him, Drake replied, patting his holstered handgun. We stepped into the clearing to find a bunch of people standing around a bonfire. They were wearing hooded white robes and turned when they heard us. Oh shit, it's the fucking clan. Drake, get behind me, I urged, stepping in front of him. One of them stepped forward, revealing the face of a grinning man. Worry not, friends. You have no reason to fear us. He explained that his name was Jeff, and he founded their group, cult really, of survivors, and they call themselves the Unplagued. Every one of them smiled from ear to ear and asked us if we wanted to stay. No disrespect, we'd love to, but we need to keep moving, Drake told them. That's a shame, Jeff responded. We were about to pass around the coal unit. For those who don't know, it's another word for the peace pipe used by the natives. Drake and I exchanged a look. 10 minutes later, we were sitting in a smoke circle. When Drake's turn came, he took a rip from it, worthy of a dragon about to breathe fire. I got in a good one when my turn came. Now, I'm high as the moon typing this on my phone. After what we've been through today, it's nice to have something to take the edge off. I'm not sure what we're going to do about our financial situation if we make it out. Hopefully we come up with something. For now, the munchies are calling my name. Of all the people behind this, it had to be him. Part 7. It's a good thing we have some battery packs with us. Otherwise, my phone would be dead by now. I've been making sure to keep it charged and off unless necessary. We don't want a repeat of what happened to Drake at the gym. If I ever end up getting torn apart by zombies to a song, I want it to be something more fitting, like heavy metal. Anyway, Jeff and his group were an okay bunch, and let us stay the night. We knew we should have kept moving, but free weed is free weed. Besides, we were safer in a group than braving it by ourselves. We were enlightened about the Unplagued. It had a long and rich history, dating back to about a week ago. Jeff and the others saw it going down and decided, fuck it, let's live in the woods. I don't see the appeal. Then again, it's not my place to judge. For the most part, Drake and me were sitting with Jeff, playing a round of Go Fish. Any fours? I asked. Go fish, Jeff replied. I drew a card. While it wasn't what I wanted, it did match another card in my hand. I put down a pair of sixes. By the way, we meant to ask you this the other night. Did any of you happen to see a guy named Van pass through here? Drake inquired, and gave a brief description of Van's appearance. Jeff's confused expression broke into another wide smile. Oh, you must mean the chosen one. The what now? I asked. The ceremony will begin at moonrise. You'll find out everything then. In hindsight, we should have taken that as our cue to skedaddle. Instead, we stuck around. Drake ended up winning our game, and afterward, Jeff ordered everyone to gather. He then got up onto a tree stump. Everyone, Drake and Gus here have been wonderful company among us. Have they not? After that, there were cheers of agreement. But they are still aware of all our customs. What do you say we demonstrate them, so that they may have a lucrative harvest? Let the ceremony begin. The cheering grew louder, worrying us that it would attract some zombies. We remained safe though, so things proceeded. Everybody started chanting and dancing like the people on Spooky Island from the first live-action Scooby-Doo movie. As it happened, we observed a large square object getting wheeled out covered in a bedsheet. Everyone stopped and pointed at the sheet. That was then yanked off, revealing a wooden cage with someone naked inside, curled up in the fetal position. Upon realizing who it was, our eyes squinted in disbelief. Van, we said in unison. Feebly, he lifted his head, recognizing us. To put it bluntly, he looked like shit. Dirt, bruises, and cuts covered him. A piece of cloth was dangling from his mouth. He muffled something, and we assumed he was trying to say, "Help me." Okay, that's it, Drake spoke up. Does anyone want to tell us what the hell's going on? Friends, there is no need for this confusion, Jeff told us. The answer is simple. Van here is the chosen one, and his noble sacrifice will yield us healthy crops. Wait, did you say sacrifice? I asked, a bit concerned. Why, yes. It is a great honor, and your friend here was worthy enough to be chosen. While we were far from friends with Van, especially at this point, the idea of him getting murdered didn't sit well with us. At most, we wanted our money back, and maybe to rough him up. Take him to the pit, Jeff commanded. The crowd parted, revealing a massive tarp surrounded by torches with abandoned construction equipment near it. The tarp was pulled back, revealing a hole filled with snarling zombies. The sacrifice part of things was making more sense now. Hey, quick question, I told Jeff. He raised a hand, prompting the others to become quiet. Yes, he replied. Let's say hypothetically, we weren't exactly comfortable with all this, and wanted to get Van out of here. What would happen? We thought Jeff would be offended by what I said. To our surprise, however, he was ecstatic. Why, nothing would make us happier. Okay, well, in that case, solidarity is truly a noble gesture. Wait, what? Triple the offerings mean triple the harvest. The next thing we knew, we were surrounded and grabbed. What are you doing? Let us go, Drake demanded. Jeff ignored him. To tell you the truth, we were going to throw you in the pit tomorrow night anyway. We froze. You are going to kill us? I said in disbelief. Do you even know how this whole sacrifice thing works? It's quite simple, really. Jeff explained when the Unplagued was founded. There was little food. One night, a member tried sneaking off with all they had, and in their attempt to flee, they didn't notice the pit and fell in. Zombies were already in it that devoured them alive. Would you believe that right after seeing this, we were blessed by finding bags of beef jerky and cans of beer? Not to be rude, But how do you know that wasn't a coincidence? I asked, trying unsuccessfully to appeal to what little remained of the crowd's reason. Because we sacrificed someone to the pit the night after before going into town the next morning. Not only did my followers and I find supplies, we remained safe while doing so. Therefore, it is now our custom. If there's anything this past week has taught me, it's that things can go to shit fast. Van was taken out of the cage and lifted into the air. We could only watch in horror as he was crowd-surfed to the pit and tossed in. The zombies were all over him like ants to sugar water. As he was getting his insides eaten, the gag was ripped out of his mouth, making his shrieks echo throughout the woods. It was only as we were being pushed toward the pit that I found the ability to speak again. "Can't we talk about this? It's not exactly a fair deal for us," I shouted. "Of course it is. After this, you will be in paradise." "What proof do you have of that?" "Our faith. Drake, Gus, your noble offers will not be forgotten." "How about you forget us being offerings in the first place?" Drake frantically asked. "What's done cannot be undone. All of our careful planning just to be killed by some cultist nutjobs. At least, that's what would have happened, if not for another streak of incredible luck on our part. Storm clouds had been gathering during this ordeal. Following a clap of thunder, rain began pouring down, causing the dirt to become mud. People slipped on it, falling into the hole. They piled into it, giving the zombies a means of climbing their way out. What followed was 2 minutes of mayhem. The Unplagued was no longer a fitting name. We were being held by 2 people each at the time. When the person on my left arm and the other on Drake's right were tackled away, we seized the opportunity and freed ourselves. Drake punched the guy holding him in the throat and shoved him to the ground. I stomped the foot of the person holding my arm and then kicked him in the crotch. He doubled over, groaning in pain. Then he was dogpiled by zombies. "Gus, look," Drake said, pointing. Our stuff was resting by a tree. We rushed over, grabbing our guns. Drake tried attacking, and Drake smashed them across the face with the butt of his rifle, while I shot another with my handgun. Fighting wasn't easy, given the limited visibility, except during lightning flashes, which meant we were mainly going off sound. Anything we heard coming towards us was getting the pump action treatment. "Didn't we pack some flashlights with us?" I asked, then yelled, "Oh shit," as a flash revealed another zombie lunging at me. I put a bullet through its head as Drake was rummaging through his bag. "Got it," he exclaimed in triumph and turned it on. "Catch." I caught it when he tossed it to me and kept the light on him as he got his weapon ready. "On your left," I told him as he was cocking his rifle. With one turn and pull of the trigger, half of the zombie's face disappeared in a cloud of red mist. To think, a mere few days ago, such a sight would have made us blow chunks. I guess we've become more resilient since then. I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing, or there might be even more psychological shit we'll have to deal with later down the road. Either way, it's helped us survive this long. Maybe I just shouldn't think about it too much. God damn it. They've got us all disorientated, I said. "Which way should we head?" After a brief discussion, we decided to go east while the cult members were getting devoured. Along the ground, I noticed someone had dropped the calumet and picked it up. "Hang on, do you see that?" I asked, shining the flashlight on a nearby bush. Checking it showed us Van's stuff. We took the money from his wallet and left the rest of his things behind. We kept running until the cries of people and zombies alike were out of earshot. "I think we're safe for now," Drake said as our lungs were getting some rest. We need to find some place to hunker down for the night. Not exactly many options when it's pouring. Guess all we can do is keep moving. We hoped the rain would let up soon. It didn't and continued all night. We were miserable, being soaked from head to toe, and having our pants covered in mud. I would have given my right nut for a warm place to dry off and change. Rain stopped finally, Drake commented as the clouds parted, revealing the first rays of sunlight. Hey, Gus? Yeah? Did we grab any energy shots at the store? I think so. Oh, thank Christ. We each downed an 8-hour energy, temporarily alleviating our fatigue. However, our feet were still screaming at us. Therefore, we decided to sit on some nearby logs for a bit. How far do you think we have until we're out? I asked. Gus, I don't know. We've been traveling for over 2 days now. We have to be close at this point. I hope so. Hey, do you think maybe we should do something when and if we make it out of here? Well, even before all this, we were spinning our heels in the mud. I think we deserve to treat ourselves. I get what you mean, man. I tell you what, after all this, let's get some of that good shit for the peace pipe. Hell yeah. We had breakfast, a bag of mixed nuts, each with some water. Then we got moving again. Hold up, Drake said. Is that smoke? By this point, another 2 hours of us walking had gone by. I took out the binoculars from my pack and handed them over. Holy shit, it is! He said ecstatically while looking through them. But where's it coming from? He gave them back to me. Raising them to my eyes showed me a cabin in the distance. Someone's living all the way out here? I asked. Looks like it. They probably want to be off-grid. Let's see if they'd be willing to help us. When we reached it, we were met with a medium-sized, one-floor log cabin. Hello? Is anyone there? Drake asked, knocking on the door. Sorry to bother you, but my friend and I are in bad shape. No answer came. I gestured to the knob. Drake shrugged and tried it, finding, to our surprise, it to be unlocked. He turned it, pushing the door open to a home shrouded in darkness. That doesn't make any sense, I said. We just saw smoke coming from here. Maybe whoever made it left. Should we wait for them to come back then? At the noises of ravenous zombies in the distance, we decided it'll be a safer bet to try explaining our unlawful entry. We went inside, shutting the door behind us. Let me find the light switch, Drake said, and I heard him feeling along the wall. There was a click and the lights came on. Good going, Gus. That wasn't me. Suddenly, there was laughter coming from someone whose voice was eerily similar. When he spoke, it chilled us to our core. Drake, Gus, it's been too long. Our heads whipped in the direction of that voice. Stepping from the shadows was the grinning face of Erickson. His fingers were wrapped around the handles of a glass tank containing a severed head he referred to as his wife. I take it you've enjoyed my virus? He asked. Your virus? Drake replied, shocked. You're the one responsible for the zombie outbreak? That's right. To tell you the truth, I wasn't expecting either of you to survive for this long. Of course. I knew contaminating the water would take care of most of this town's residents. The water? I said, realization splashing me in the face. No pun intended. I thought back to everything went hell in a handbasket. Our faucet had acted up, and therefore, we switched to drinking bottled water. As far as we knew, Roscoe and Van were only drinking bottled water as well. The latter made sense, seeing as how he had higher standards. As for the former, I think he mentioned once that he didn't drink from the tap because he heard it would make him gay. I didn't understand his reasoning. To each his own, I guess. "Give us one reason we shouldn't blow your head off right now," Drake asked, pointing his rifle at Erickson. The mad doctor only smiled. My face broke out in a sweat at the noise of several weapons being trained on us from the darkness. "You don't think I'd be so careless, did you?" Erickson asked. More people came out of the shadows. Only then did it dawn on me how oddly lit the place was. The majority of them were a form of cop or security profession. Then there were two that stood out. The first we recognized. The former was Mayor Bill Snyder. With him was a woman, sporting a viper smile. "Why is the mayor here?" I asked. "Yeah, and why do you look like Hillary Clinton?" Drake added to the woman beside Snyder. Now that he mentions it, she does remind me a lot of her, I thought. Erickson gave a sinister laugh. "All will be answered in due time," he told us. "Now, would someone be so kind as to show our guests where they'll be staying?" At that, we were struck across the face with batons, making everything go dark. I can't say accurately where I was taken. I faded in and out of consciousness as they were dragging us away. What I did glimpse shakes me to my core to even describe. There were windowed rooms with different zombies. I thought what we'd encountered thus far were abominations. These go against Mother Nature herself. The worst ones I saw were a few zombified family, and one guy without any skin clawing at his window. He was moaning as he did it, and I got a harrowing sensation it was all due to pain. All my weapons were taken away, and I was thrown into this room. It's similar to the ones in hospitals, with a bed and a sink. I still have my phone on me. I'm not sure why. I guess they don't realize I have internet access. Either that, or they missed it outright. In any case, I'm able to upload this post. There's a Wi-Fi signal down here. The password wasn't difficult to crack. It is, "Erickson is a genius 1234. I have no clue where they took Drake. I can only hope he's staying strong. Knowing that Erickson is behind all this, and whatever's in store for us is making my nut hairs bristle. If I don't get a chance to update again, I want to end this message. No justice, no peace, fuck the police." That shit was wild. Finale. The things I've seen. God damn. My morning today began with a cold splash of water to the face. I bolted upright, gasping to see Erickson standing in my room with some security. "Good morning, Gus. I hope you slept well." I had, especially since we'd spent the last few nights before then outside, but I chose not to comment on that. "Where's Drake?" I inquired. "All in due time, my friend. I can assure you he is doing fine. Now, I'm sure you must be famished." Erickson snapped his fingers, and someone stepped forward, extending what appeared to be a chocolate protein shake. An apple, a banana, and a strawberry multigrain bar. I stared at both hesitantly. "Come now, do you think I go through all this trouble just to poison you here? I'm more creative than that. What are you planning on doing to us then?" All I received in return was a knowing smile. I took the food, and then Erickson and the others left. The first bite I took broke the dam on my hunger. I scarfed down the rest of it, chasing it with a protein shake. As soon as I finished, the door opened again. "Did you enjoy your breakfast?" Erickson asked. "Yeah, it was alright, I guess." Erickson stared at me, smiling. "Is something supposed to happen?" I asked after several moments of awkward silence. His expression faltered. and he turned to one of the guards. You did remember to drug his food, correct? Yes, sir. I made sure of it. What pills did you use? The guard thought for a moment. The flat round ones, sir. You idiot! Erickson snapped, chastising him. Those were the caffeine pills! He let out a sigh of annoyance. Knock him out again, he ordered with a dismissive hand wave. Once again, my face got acquainted with the butt of a rifle. This time, I woke up in a dimly lit room. The first thing I noticed when my vision cleared was the reflection of fluorescent lights on the floor. The second was Drake picking himself up. He ran over, helping me up. Gus, are you okay? I've been better. What about you? They drugged me. Same. Except they gave me the wrong thing, and then hit me in the face again. Damn, that sucks, man. It's about to get worse. Erickson interrupted from behind, making us jump. We whirled around to find Erickson, standing behind what we originally thought to be a mirror. In front of him was a control panel. With him was Snyder, and the woman who looked like Hillary Clinton. Apologies for not bringing you here last night. This took more time to set up than we planned. That's it, Drake said, raising his voice. Why don't you quit jerking us around? Drake, such vulgar language. But if you insist, all questions shall be answered. He explained what happened to him following his arrest 2 years ago. To think me, the genius, would have to spend half a year in that filthy penitentiary. They even took away my beloved. My empathy goes out to whoever had to share a cell with that man. How did you escape? I asked. I can answer that. Snyder smiled. You see, Erickson and I used to be college roommates. Was he a fucking nutjob back then too? Drake interrupted. Erickson shot him a glare as Snyder went on, ignoring the interjection. Even back then, it was clear his intelligence far exceeded that of his peers, which is why I've been funding his research. When I heard of his arrest, I came to visit him in prison. We set this all up, and the first step was me becoming mayor of your town. Wait, that doesn't make any sense, I said. How did you know which town we were living in? There's a saying, Erickson told me. It's not what you know, it's who you know. I think that's incorrect. The real saying should be, it's what and who you know. My web of connection runs deep. That's right, Snyder said. My father is a powerful man, and it didn't take long to track you down. After that, it was only a matter of time to put all this in motion. Where we are now was intended to work as a system of bunkers during the Cold War, and we've expanded it. Okay, well, what about her? Drake asked, pointing to the woman who looked like Hillary Clinton. There was a glint of greed in her eyes as her lips curved upward. My name is Karen McConnell, and I'm the owner of your neighborhood, she said, even sounding similar to Clinton. Hold the phone, I said. You're the one in charge of our apartment? That's right. Do you know how much shit we've had to deal with? Leaks from the fridge and dishwasher, the AC and heat not working, mold in the walls, and roaches everywhere. She seemed bored by my words, and that further infuriated me. Where the hell do you get off charging people that much for rent? I screamed at her. Well, Erickson needs a lot of funds for his projects. Excuse me? Why do you think I kept raising the rent and never fixing anything? The implication of those words shocked us to our core. You mean you've been using our money to pay for this? I said. Erickson here has promised the mayor and I that what we put in will be repaid, tripled. You're a special kind of bitch, You know that? Drake told her. Her grin increased. Tell me something I don't know. Now then, Erickson, if you would be so kind. With pleasure. He pressed a button, resulting in the wall behind us rising. In its place was another window, with a room akin to ours. Nobody in it noticed us, which made us infer that two-way glass was also being used for it. There were two people in the room, a man and who we guessed was his girlfriend or wife. A glass wall separated them that had a single door in the center. Erickson, what are you about to do? I asked, not liking where this was going. Initially, I was going to have the reanimated rip you two apart. Most people would call them zombies, Drake said. Most people are morons. As I was saying, the more I thought about it, the more I realized such an end would be far too merciful for the likes of you. Before you is a preview of the torture 2 years in the making. Erickson hit a button. Green gas filled the area on the woman's side, and we observed her beginning to convulse. The guy was pounding frantically against the glass and appeared to be shouting her name. Through the gas, her silhouette was changing, becoming taller. Her arms were also growing, reaching disproportionate lengths compared to her body. It took us a while to perfect the formula, Erickson explained. The one used to contaminate the town water supply was a weaker version, which is why it created less advanced variants of the reanimated, such as the one you are seeing now. We could only watch in horrific disbelief at what transpired next. The gas cleared. The woman before was now a monstrosity with pale skin, as if she had just crawled out of her own grave. It was falling off in some places and squirming in others. Her hair had faded to wisps, and her hands ended in claws. She stared at the man, sizing up her meal. He stared back with a terror-stricken grief. The door between them opened. The woman came through it. Her movements were unnerving. Picture this way. Picture the way a gorilla moves, except jittery. The guy backed away, shaking his head. The woman moved closer. He turned, dashing to the door that led out of the room in a futile escape attempt. Seeing how it was locked, though, he could only hit and claw at it. She spun him around, yelling in his face, before picking him up and throwing him to the floor. She pounced on him, and what followed was like seeing someone get put through a human-sized garbage disposal. Flesh and bone were being shredded in seconds. All the while, the man's mouth hung open in an agonized scream. To make it even more fucked up, she was only attacking below his neck. If she started by ripping open his head, he'd at least have already been dead before what was happening to him. Instead, he was forced to watch the person he once knew eat him out, and not in the good way. She was scarfing down his organs faster than a snake in a henhouse. Soon, the guy's shrieks faded into dying gurgles. At last, he was granted some mercy when she brought his face to hers, almost as if they were about to kiss. She then chomped her teeth into his skull, exploding it in a burst of bones, blood, and grey matter. The woman was looking around wildly. I knew she couldn't see us, and yet it almost felt as if she was somehow sensing our presence. Her eyes contained a chilling awareness. Erickson's cackling cut through our stunned silence. Now you understand what's in store for you. What happened to him is going to happen to us? I replied. No, Gus. Not what happened to him, but what has happened to her. You see, to enact my original revenge plan, I need those that are reliable and strong. These specimens are perfect for it. Not only are they physically capable, they'll also be able to follow orders. Wait, what do you mean by that? Drake asked. Isn't it obvious? The gas I use contains nanobots, meant for rewiring the brain and making it susceptible to my directives. The mind, however, is still intact. So that means... My voice trailed off as the statement settled over us like a blanket of ice. That's right. You'll be passengers in your own bodies as it tears apart the people you care about. Once you are changed, it'll be a simple matter to keep you here and track them down. Well, then, let's just say what you witnessed mere moments ago will be child's play in comparison. We looked back at the woman who now sat subdued, with her arms wrapped around her knees, in the grey puddle that used to be her lover. You know, in a way, I must thank you, Erickson told us. If not for what happened at the hospital, none of this would have happened, and I wouldn't be any closer to completing my revenge. You can thank us by letting us go, Drake suggested. Yeah, and we promise not to tell anyone anything, I added. Erickson let out another sigh. This time, it was the one of someone with their hands tied. I'm afraid I can't do that. Not after what you did to her. Erickson held up the container with the severed head. Does that mean if we apologize we'll be let go? I asked. He turned to the head, staring at it for a couple of seconds. Drake and I exchanged a glance. Very well, he answered. Yep, we're sorry about that, Drake said. Really, we feel terrible about it. We could take it back if we could, I told Erickson and the head. We hope you're doing better now. Erickson nodded thoughtfully. I must say, that was moving. What do you think, honey? As he was having another silent conversation, I wondered how Bill and Karen were keeping it together around him. My guess is if they didn't, they'd end up in me and Drake's position. He turned back to us. Good news. I'm not going to kill you. It was as if someone threw us a life preserver. But I'm still going to release the gas, with a grenade attached to it. You said you wouldn't kill us, Drake yelled accusingly. And I won't. But I never said anything about allowing you to live, did I? He was about to hit the button that would fill our room with gas, when suddenly the place shook. What in the world was that? Bill demanded. Relax, it's probably nothing, Erickson replied, only for it to occur again. Someone, bring up the outside cameras. My God, they're at the entrances, someone said. Erickson, what is the meaning of this? Karen asked, now agitated. Would everyone keep your heads on? I assure you, it's under control. I made sure to install a failsafe, in case of scenarios such as this. Erickson started hitting more buttons on the panel. One, in particular, made a distinct noise. He looked over at the zombified woman in the other room, who was still sitting up. He hit the same button once more. Again, nothing changed. A bead of sweat trickled down his face. Things were not under control. Everyone was focusing on Erickson. He opened his mouth to say something, and then shut it, repeating this action several times. Is there something you want to share with us? Karen icily asked Erickson. Yes, I have thought up a brilliant new idea, and that is for us to get the hell out of here. The ensuing panic was difficult to follow. People were fighting each other to get to the exit. The zombified woman bolted to her feet out of nowhere, lunging at the window, causing me and Drake to yell in unison. Her fists were pounding at the glass. Does she know we're in here? Drake asked in surprise. Even if she does, we should be alright, I replied. It's reinforced. A small crack in the center appeared. Note to self, learn when to keep your goddamn mouth shut. As she went on, Shards were breaking away. We were like fish in a pond, with a hungry cat staring at us. Then somehow in the commotion on Erickson's side, a switch was hit that opened the door leading out of our room. We rushed to it as the woman punched through. I risked a look back. Her eyes made contact with mine. It was the equivalent of blood in a shark-filled ocean. We ran out of the room, slamming the door behind us and locking it. We knew it wouldn't take her long as we raced through the corridor. Erickson mentioned us being in a bunker, so we needed to go up. We came to a pathway that split into 3 directions. "Which way?" I asked. We then heard a rumbling, which turned out to be a horde of zombies coming from the center, and another coming from the right. "Left it is," I said. We came to an elevator door, and were frantically hitting the button to open it, as the zombies were rapidly closing the gap. "Open, you piece of shit," Drake screamed. Finally, the light above us came in, and the door slid open. We nearly tripped over each other getting into it. Then Drake hit the button. The zombies reached the door right after it closed, making several dents in the metal. "Oh fuck, that was close," I said, leaning against the wall to catch my breath. "This is insane. We don't even have a plan to make it out of the woods. If we even escape this place." "One thing at a time, man." "Yeah, I guess you're right. As long as we can get a pair of wheels, we'll be good." Erickson's voice sounded over the intercom. "Due to circumstances outside my control, which means one of you incompetent buffoons messed up, I was forced to activate the self-destruct sequence. Make your way to the nearest exit within 10 minutes. You have got to be fucking kidding me," I said with expiration. When I finished saying this, there was a noise from below us. It sounded like something climbing. The zombie woman's clawed hand burst through the floor. We screamed as it came to a stop. We didn't even wait for the door to open fully. We put our fingers in the crack, pushing it the rest of the way. The floor we ended up on contained numerous armed personnel, who were surprised to see 2 escapees. They forgot about us when they saw what was on our tail. Someone yelled fire, and we hit the floor right before the bullets started flying. The good news was, her attention was no longer on us. The bad news is, the guards didn't stand a chance against her. She was tearing them apart left and right. All the while, we were crawling along the floor. At one point, someone landed in front of us. Well, the lower half of them anyway. Seeing the car keys on their belt, we snatched them up. We fished through their pockets, pulling out a keycard. We also got some guns off the people who fell victim. Also, if what was happening was any indicator, they may as well have been paperweights. We were about to get out of Dodge when we spotted a table that was stacked with briefcases. We didn't know what they contained. However, seeing how important things are kept in briefcases, we decided to grab some. At the very least, we could crack zombies across the face with them. We got out of there and into another hall. "Where's the damn exit?" I wondered aloud in frustration. "Gus." Drake was pointing to a sign labeled exit, with an arrow underneath it. "Oh, I guess we should go that way." "How much time do we have left?" Drake asked as we were moving. Checking my phone showed we had only 4 minutes left from Erickson's announcement. If the self-destruct was going to unfold how we thought, not only did we need to go outside, we also had to be a safe distance away. The exit door was our light at the end of the tunnel. Bursting through it, we tasted fresh air. Drake hit the button on the keys, and we heard a beep nearby. The keys were to an SUV that we used to make our escape. We got in and sped away. Other vehicles were on the road with us. One of them had Erickson, Karen, and Bill as passengers. The SUV we were in had tinted windows. That meant nobody could tell who was in it. That gave us the opportunity for a little payback. Drake signaled to me. We grabbed our guns and rolled down our windows. Drake hit the gas, and as we were driving by, we shot out their tires and flipped them off. I wish I could have taken a picture of their faces, because they were priceless. After everything they put us through, that was like water at the end of a marathon. We drove past them and on the path going to a main road. Then we watched what happened to them in the rearview, while their vehicle was consumed by the explosion. The shock of it did send it upward. "Holy shit," I said, watching it fly through the air before falling into a lake. The bumper stayed above the surface for a few seconds before sinking along with the rest of the car. We had to stop again, simply to process everything. Luckily, Erickson had the foresight to have a lot of the trees around the area removed to mitigate the risk of wildfire. That said, it was burning bright. In the flames, humanoid shapes were running around. They didn't get far before collapsing. Whether they were human or zombie, I don't want to know. Without another word, we got back in the SUV and drove off. Down the road, it occurred to me to check what was in the briefcases. There was no combination on it, so I undid the latches and lifted it. What was inside made my heart stop. For once, I mean that in a good way. "Drake?" I said, trying to force out his name. His reaction upon seeing what I had was to slam on the brakes. I nearly hit my head on the dashboard when he did, but I didn't care. We had 2 briefcases full of $100 bills. Presumably, Erickson would have used it to make a deal with someone. Too bad for them. It's ours now. We didn't know how much money was in there, only that it was a lot. "Okay, we need a plan," Drake said. "We can't be carrying all this around in a vehicle we don't even own." He was right. If a cop pulled us over, it would be hard to explain ourselves. I remembered something then. Patting myself, I realized I still had my keys. I showed them to him and he grinned. Then we made our way to Walmart, where my car was still parked. "Hang on," I said after we got out. "What?" "I figured while we're here." I gestured to the store. Half an hour later, I was driving us along the highway with our new money buried under a pile of groceries. We drove about 12 hours before stopping at a hotel where we are currently. Drake was outside earlier talking to his cousin. He cooked up some story about us being let go from our jobs and then our complex burning down. His cousin told us he'd gladly take us in so long as we could pay for expenses. We don't have any objections to that. As far as we can tell, it's better to keep our newfound wealth on the down low. We'll stay at Drake's cousin's place for a while and then get homes of our own. God damn, this week has been nuts. Speaking of, I hope whatever happened to Erickson was enough to put him down for good. Maybe we should be changing our names on our to-do list, on the off chance it isn't. Ah well, that's something we can take care of at a later time. For now, it's been a long day, and I'm exhausted. If I have to post here again about some other horseshit, it'll be soon. This is Gus saying, have a good one, everybody. I hope you enjoy this story. What did you think of it? Let me know what you thought in the comments section down below. Don't forget to stab the like button, subscribe, hit the bell and leave a comment. This video is made with the support of my incredible channel members Patreon subscribers, and all my viewers. Thank you so much for supporting me. Don't forget to check out my social media accounts below, including my merch. Stay safe, my little spooklings. And remember, I'll be watching you.